Well, hello, how are you doing? This is episode 6 of the Positive Progress podcast. And today is a very special day because we got a very special guest. Now, as previously stated, when myself and Robyn do this, we normally just one of us puts forward a sort of topic, like a banner or a headline, but we don't know what the other one's going to talk about. And that very same thing applies today to our special guest, who is Maria Newman. And she's going to set the topic for today. Better say hello to Robyn first, though. Hello, Robyn. Good afternoon. How are you?
Hello.
Sorry, I almost forgot you there. Maria is going to be the person who puts the topic forward today. So before that, she's going to explain to you exactly who she is and what she does. And the reason for that is because apparently Robyn and Maria know each other pretty well. But this is the first time that myself and Maria actually met. So there we are. Ready, steady, go. Over to you, Maria, and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me on your podcast. So yes, my name is Maria Newman and I help my clients to regain their confidence, reconnect with who they are and silence their inner critic so that they can navigate life with certainty. And I work with individuals who have come to a crossroads in their lives, whether they've been recently divorced, they've been made redundant, they're contemplating retirement, they might be a return to work mum. Their today does not look how it did yesterday, and I am there to help them in this new chapter of their lives.
Excellent. How long have you actually been doing this then, Maria?
Oh, a few years. My journey to coaching probably started back in 2016, 2017, when I myself got made redundant from my corporate job. And at that moment in time, I was a new mum and I had 2 children. My daughter was about 2.5 years old and my son was not quite 10 months.
So did you find at that particular time that it was reasonably straightforward to cope, or was it a particularly difficult time for you?
Fortunately, I'm a great believer in opportunities, and I saw the redundancy as an opportunity to do something different. Not necessarily what I've gone on to do, because as far as I was concerned, I was just going to get another job in the corporate world. However, because I worked with such an awesome coach, my career path took a turn towards what I'm doing today. So yes, I saw it with positive eyes.
It did. As Robyn well knows, I really don't hate. I don't hate. I'll try that again. I do hate cliches. I don't like people who talk in sort of like da 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 sort of things, you know. But one which I do believe in, and we've obviously discussed on a previous podcast, is about that apparent failure. You know, what people see as failure, almost always is an opportunity if you've got the sort of the mindset to see it as an opportunity. So I think that's more or less what you were saying there. You know, something beyond your sort of control, and you've made an opportunity from it, that chance to change.
Yes, yeah. I'm a believer in silver linings. There is always a silver lining. You just need to look for it.
Yeah. So there we go. The big moment now. What are you going to talk about today? What are we going to hear?
So what I'm going to be talking about today is the need to fit in. The fact that fitting in is actually stopping us from truly living.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. Lovely. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Over to you.
Just crack on.
Yeah. Fine. Thank you.
My background is that both my mum and dad are Greek Cypriots. So they came over to the UK for completely different reasons, met each other here, and I was born here. And I think from a very early age, I felt the need to somehow fit in, to find out where my place was in life. And the reason I think for this, other than our natural human behavior, which is we need to fit in with a tribe, for me personally was, well, my parents are Greek Cypriots, yet I don't quite feel like I fit in that camp. And I was born in England, yet something doesn't quite feel right in that camp. So where do I fit in? And for a lot of my childhood, I think I was trying to answer this question, where do I fit in? And I suppose more recently, now that I have 2 children, my daughter now is 11, she'll be 12 next year. My son has just turned 9. And I've very much become an advocate of there is no need to fit in. I want them to just be who they are, and they will naturally draw people to themselves, because it does actually stop us from living, because we end up trying to put on all these masks in order to fit in instead of just being. And as we know, if you just take the time to be present and just enjoy this moment and just be, that's where all the joy is, and that's where all the gold is, and that's where you will see the opportunities that are right for you. I'm very much in the mindset of ensuring my children do not get molded into being a certain type of individual because of the school system and everybody else who's around them, as well as ensuring that they feel comfortable in their own skin.
I think for kids, they just want to fit in. They want to have their friendship group and they want to be a part of that. I remember, like you're saying, that growing up and trying to answer that question. And I think yours was a particular situation, but as you also said, I think we all go through that to a greater or lesser degree. I know I never felt that I fitted in, but I also didn't feel I had somebody like you in my corner saying, that's okay. Whoever you are, it's okay to be yourself. It's only in later years that I've really read and studied around this. And what you're saying reminds me so much of Brene Brown, who quotes from Maya Angelou, who says that if we're trying to fit in, we're not fitting in. The only way we can fit in is knowing that we belong nowhere, we belong everywhere. But it's that thing of when I'm fitting in by wearing a mask, do they love me or do they love the mask? And then I'm in that imposter syndrome. Versus if you've got somebody who's telling you it's okay, you're fine just as you are, and showing that, because obviously the words in themselves aren't enough, but I know that you're amazing at how you talk with your kids like they're real people, not like they're kids. Because I think sometimes adults, particularly at school, you just feel like you're a child, don't you? You don't feel like you're a real person in your own right. So I love this conversation that you've brought, this topic. I think it's so central. And that's where the magic is, when we can give that to the next generation.
And also, if from a young age, naturally you're learning to put on all these masks to fit in, that then just becomes a habit that you take into adulthood. And actually wearing all these masks to fit in is really exhausting. It's more tiring to remember, okay, that when I'm with this group of people, this is who I am. When I'm with this group of people, this is who I am. As opposed to if you're just yourself, not only is it freeing, but you don't have to remember who you are to what and to be everything to everyone, which I think definitely from a mother's point of view is something that a habit that we get ourselves into. We want to be everything to everybody.
Do you think it causes excess stress then? The reason I ask is because Robyn knows my history, but basically when I was a police officer, when I was a police officer, I went through a period of depressive illness myself, and a great element of that was this, what I call performing, was this putting on this act, albeit an authentic act. It wasn't pretending, but I was so conscious of being me. I was so conscious of what I was expected to do. And you're talking about something that's gone from childhood, possibly. I don't know if it was in my childhood or not. But that followed me into adulthood. And that was, I think, rather a contributory factor towards what happened to me. So your motivation with your children, is it to give them freedom? Is it to give them protection? What is it? What's your thought on it?
That's a really good question. I think it's probably a combination of both. I definitely want to reduce the amount of stress that they put on themselves, because I can see it now. I can see it now in the way they are, and the pressures that then lead to the stress that's put on them. So whether it's a school play and it's the stress of learning the words, learning the songs, whether it's the stress of spelling tests or maths tests. And it happens from a very early age. And, I believe in learning, and every child needs to learn. And yeah, it's good to do some tests, because then you know where the level you're at. So I'm not saying that testing is neither bad nor good. And I just see the stress on my children's faces when we talk about these things. And for me, I say to them, it's not about what you do and how well you do. It's about the fact that do your best, whatever your best is. As long as you can look in the mirror and you can say, I've done my best, nobody can ask any more of you. And actually, no, you can't ask any more of yourself. And I suppose from a protection point of view, I'm thinking about some of the adults I know who, for one reason or another, aren't able to live authentically. And I know we hear that word authentic a lot. I just look at them and I sort of think life would feel so much easier if you could just be. And if we can learn to love ourselves and like ourselves and trust ourselves from childhood, instead of being molded into something that then we have to shed when we're adults, it would be so much easier, wouldn't it? So I think it's two.
I think it's maybe important just to say at that point that when you're talking about being authentic and not feeling I have to be this for this group of people and this for this group of people, it's not to say we're always the same, is it? Because we will be different in different situations, because different situations bring out different things in us. It's not that we're always having to be the same, but we're just always being ourselves. Because I think I hear people say, well, if I'm different in this group and different in this group, is that not authentic? Am I not being real? And all of those second guessings that we do. But I think it's just allowing ourselves, like you say, just to be and allowing that situation to bring whatever part of our being or aspect of ourselves that comes out, but not having to pretend. It's that pretense and that having to try so hard. So maybe that's a good way to kind of judge where we are with this. Am I trying? Is it exhausting? Or am I just having fun? Am I just playing? Because it's okay to play. And particularly when we're small, I think, to be able to play with, am I like this in this situation? Or am I like this? Because I'm still finding my way, and that's okay. It's still maybe fluid. But so long as I'm just having fun with it and not putting pressure on myself and just letting it flow, then I think that, and going back to the authenticity as well, I think when we realize that authenticity and attachment are so fundamental when we're tiny, but if our attachment is threatened by our authenticity, so if we're being real, maybe throwing a tantrum because we're trying to express ourselves, but then parent tells us off for that, we'll sacrifice our authenticity, our truth, and what we need to say in order to keep the attachment. And it literally does feel life-threatening because we only see black and white, life or death, from that survival mode. So when we get into later life and we can't understand why can I not be authentic? Maybe that's why. Because it literally does feel life-threatening. It's literally scary to stand up and be you if you've always been under the impression that that's going to mean people don't like you anymore.
And that for me is why being a parent is a challenging job, because on one hand, It's creating that safe environment so that our children feel safe to be able to express themselves. And at the same time, we're also trying to create some principles by which they can then live, which sometimes is difficult because, yes, when your child decides, because they have no other ways of communication, that the best way for me as a child to tell you as my parent that I'm not happy is to have a huge tantrum, which sometimes we just want to go, I know you're expressing yourself. I'm a bit tired. I can't quite manage a tantrum.
Could you just
today.
do it more quietly?
That's polite. That's terribly polite, isn't it?
It's just like, could you just go in the other room and have your tantrum and come back? So it's one that we learn, and I'm continually learning about it, and I don't think there's any point as a parent that you go, yeah, do you know what, look, I've mastered it, I can do this. It just doesn't happen, does it? So it is about that balance of allowing them to express themselves, even if I don't like the way in which they choose to do it, versus also protecting myself. Because by me, like you said, by me sort of keeping them small and saying to them, well, that's not how we do it, is it? I'm now changing them. So it is that fine balance of allowing them to express themselves, and eventually they will learn the best way that they can communicate with people so that they can get their message across. It's just at that moment in time, the best way for them to communicate is to have a tantrum, which is just, we manage. But what you're saying earlier about the authenticity, there's a writer called Don Miguel. He used to be a monk. He probably still is a monk, sorry. And he wrote the 4 agreements. And his first agreement is be impeccable with your word. So for me, that's got 2 sides to it. Number 1 is speaking and behaving in a way that is aligned to your values. However, the flip side of it is saying, and be aware of your audience. So if your audience are not ready to hear what you have to say, then just be mindful of that and choose whether you still say it, because we have to respect the people who are hearing the message as well as respecting our need to say what we need to say. In being authentic, I personally don't think it's a case of, well, I'm just going to be how I'm going to be and you need to take me whether you like it or not. It's like, let's be respectful of the person on the other side as well.
Go ahead, Nigel.
In the last episode, we talked about communication and connection, which goes to what you were just saying about the fact it's not me saying, shh, listen to me now. Listen, I'm important. I got lots to say, right? And you do meet people like that. Thankfully, they're the minority. But it's about this two-way thing. And I'm really interested in what you just said, Maria, in relation to that conversation. And it's not just about you saying, I'm super authentic, I'm going to take over the agenda here, and I'm going to be the one who's going to say that, because to me, that then starts to lean in towards arrogance. It leans in towards maybe saying that I'm right and everybody else is wrong. So I really, really like this idea of this two-way communication, because that's something that I bore Robyn with this, because I'm so passionate about it, to be honest, because it's, to me, communication and human interaction is such a wonderful thing.
It is. You can't have a conversation if it's one-sided, can you? I know people sometimes say we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that's the ratio in which we have a conversation. And it's also about truly listening to the person who's talking, as opposed to formulating a response to what the person is saying to you.
I think so. I mean, as I just said, I mean, Robyn hears this all the time, but it is something I'm genuinely passionate about, because we were talking last time about the fact that this sort of mechanism we got here to converse now, right, is wonderful geographically, because of the fact it gives you, I can talk to someone in Australia, I can talk to someone in Zimbabwe, I can talk to somebody somewhere. But what you're actually giving away then is And let's go back to the A word, authenticity. When you're actually standing that far away from somebody else, you can be performing, you can be performative if you like, but it's almost like you have to be authentic. It's very difficult in those circumstances to hide your true intention. No, you could disagree, it's okay.
I think some people can be really good actors. And some people have probably been doing it for so long that actually they don't know who they are. And,
Maybe.
and I think it's probably that simple. They've just got into the habit of this is who I am with these people, and therefore this is how I act. And I think it's all about expectation, and it's not necessarily the expectation that the other person has told you they have about you. It's the expectation that we think that the other person thinks that we should be doing, which is, it's mind-blowing in the sense of we're assuming what the other person thinks that we should be doing when actually we don't necessarily know what the other person is thinking. And therefore the best thing is we just be ourselves, which takes practice, especially when you've been conditioned to be somebody who you're not. And then the lines get blurred and you don't really know who you are.
I think it takes more than practice. I think it takes nerve, to be honest. I was going to use another expression, which I won't use, but I'll just say nerve. And I think that I'm coming back to the stress and tension aspect again, which leads on to the well-being thing. Is it more stressful? I mean, I don't know if I know. I don't know the answer myself, to be honest. Is it more stressful to be authentic on a regular basis, or is it more stressful to pretend?
I think that you have to look at that from two different angles. I think if you're being somebody who you think you should be, you're avoiding the stress that's going to come at you. However, I think you're adding fuel to the fire inside you that's saying, this is not right, this doesn't feel right to me. So I think it's like two sides of stress. You're protecting yourself from the stress that might come at you because you don't perform in a certain way. You're not the right type of person somebody says you should be. So you're protecting yourself from that barrage of potential stress that's going to come towards you. But on the inside, you know something's not right, and your internal dialogue is going to give you that stress instead. So are you sort of experiencing the more of two evils in a sense, because we're harder on ourselves than anybody else would ever be.
So do you think then, in terms of timescales, one is avoiding short-term stress, but potentially creating stress of a different kind, a more internal kind?
Yeah, and I think a more
fuel in that
hurtful
internal fire.
And I think a more hurtful kind as well, because that takes me back to obviously the course that that you ran, that I joined, Robyn, where we talk all about stress. And since going on that course and learning from you, I've become a lot more mindful of the stress that I put on myself, and hearing and feeling the signals from my body that are telling me that actually I've put myself under stress. Whereas up until I sat down with you in April, I think I was a little bit oblivious to all of that. It was more a case of protecting myself from what was happening externally as opposed to what was going on inside. And the fact that, it's the incremental stresses that we experience in life. So we assume that in order to be stressed, you need to have massive bad things happen to you.
Have you heard this before, Robyn? Have you heard this story before?
It's sounding a bit familiar, yes.
Sorry, Maria, go on.
Whereas, like experiencing lots of small stresses, one after the other, it builds up. And it can be the same as something massive, which, you know, I mean, I talked to Robyn about what I went through last year, and it was nothing major. It was just a load of little things. Actually, those little things built up to something bigger, and my body was telling me, hello, Maria, you need to stop. And I was thinking, I'm not stressed. I haven't experienced anything really bad. I haven't lost anybody. I haven't been injured badly. I've just got these little blips that are happening. What's going on? So I agree with you, Robyn. I think it is about the short term, protecting yourself against the short term, not knowing that actually there's something waiting for you in the long term if you're not careful.
And going back to what you were saying about raising children in the world and in the society and in the conditioning that we receive, do you think that children are picking up a message that the world is full of potential threats, upset, hurt, and so we need to be looking out for it, on the defense, versus what's going on inside of me? Listening to inside of me. So our focus often, and I'm really just asking this question because it's what you're saying is bringing this up for me. I'm thinking of my own experience. Are we too much focused on the let's defend ourselves from potential stuff out there versus maybe I should just listen to my body's responses and address those, because that's what's really going to give me the information that this is working for me and this isn't.
Do you know what? You asking me that question couldn't be any more well-timed, because my daughter yesterday, literally, and it wasn't just yesterday, she's asked me a couple of times. She hears things on social media about what's going on in the world, not like the more superficial stuff of, you know, well, we have to have certain looking eyebrows and we have to have our hair in a certain way. I mean, like worldly stuff, talking about what's going on with Russia, Ukraine, over in Israel. So she hears this because obviously the world is very noisy, and unless we choose to, it doesn't get switched off. And she said to me, do I need to be worried about Russia bombing England? And I mean, this is coming from an 11-year-old. We don't typically have the news on. It's what she's seeing on social media. And we try to restrict the social media that she sees. So they do worry about the external stuff and protecting themselves from the external stuff as opposed to the internal stuff, because they see the external as, I suppose, a real threat. And as of yet, they're not necessarily aware of what's going on inside. And I suppose because she hasn't necessarily experienced anything that suggests to her that she might be experiencing internal stresses, it's not an immediate thing that she needs to worry about.
I just think it's so sad in a way that children of their young age, same, you know, you're at the age of your two, that they're already so worried. To me, 11 is still very young, and I'm maybe a bit of a previous era and I'm anachronistic for this time, but that children should be allowed to enjoy their childhood as much as they possibly can. I think that's getting more and more challenging, and everybody having phones and whatever. But I love that when children can just go off into their own world of make-believe, because I think that is practice for the real world. That's where it's a safe space that you can try things out. And I think it's sad that children are facing these things like war. And I know for my age, there was talk of the Cold War and what was going to happen. And obviously I grew up in Belfast, so there was all of that going on. But at the same time, there wasn't news in the same way as there is now. There wasn't social media in the same way as there is now. So although it was there and as a constant background and it did impinge on me, I don't think it did to the extent that it does for children nowadays with social media.
Yeah, I mean, obviously when I was younger, so I was born in the late 70s. And so as far as the outside world being in my life, I had 4 channels on the television, we had a landline, and that was it. The only way somebody could come into your house uninvited was if they came round to your house and knocked on your door. And actually, people wouldn't necessarily do that unless they liked you, because they'd be met by your parents. And people didn't really make phone calls because you'd have to ask your parent to use a phone call. So once you were home, you were safe. Whereas that's not the case anymore. You know, if as a parent, I think our job is bigger when it comes to protecting our children, and especially their well-being, because even if they haven't got a phone, they've probably got a friend who has a phone. So even if you're a parent who's saying, I'm not going to give my child a phone until they are this age, they will be mixing with people who probably do have phones. So when it comes to protecting their well-being as far as social media is concerned and what's going on in the outside world, I'm more of an advocate for, let's not paint it as horrible. Let's see how we can work together to actually make it less invasive to them and less of a thing to worry about and be concerned about, because the world will continue to change. Tech will continue to develop until, you know, and it's developing faster and faster and faster. So rather than saying this is a bad thing, we should shut everything off, we should protect our children and not let them have any visibility of it, to me, that seems the wrong thing to do. And I know that opinion is not popular. I would rather everybody says, right, how can we work with this so that it rather than it being a scary thing, children are educated when it comes to this. I mean, I often say to my children when they come out with a statement that seems crazy because they've seen something on YouTube, I'm like, do you believe everything you see on YouTube? And now they're even like questioning each other. So if Luca, for example, says, oh, X, Y, and Z, Lyra go, do you believe everything you see on YouTube? So I've already started planting the seed with them of just question stuff. Just because somebody says it doesn't mean it's correct. And that's what I would rather we did than I've decided it's bad, I'm just going to shut it off.
But why did you say it was unpopular, Maria? Why have you got that idea?
Because there are many parents within my circle, and there are parents who are petitioning the government to, for example, not allow children to have phones until they're 16. So there are many parents who want to stop phone usage. There are many parents who want to clamp down on social media. So that's why I say it's unpopular, because I feel that when I'm having these conversations, I'm in a minority.
I'm with you now. I thought I was taking the other point of view, which was the fact that the parents were in favour of their children being sort of bombarded by all this world affairs stuff.
No.
Yeah, sorry, that was obviously my bad. Then there was a lack of understanding on my part, and the reason I say that is because something myself and Robyn have discussed before. Not necessarily this particular phrase, but I use this phrase, which is do the doable and ditch the dross. And we're talking about control the controllable. And I think that it's not necessarily just with children, but when I talk to other adults as well, I say the first big step in relation to relieving all this stress and tension that comes with the news, which comes with Putin, which comes with all the Middle East war, which comes with all these terrible things, is this realization that it is relevant, but it's unchangeable. There's nothing that you can actually do as an individual. Because I think there's a lot of adults and children, going on from what you were just saying, who find it very, very difficult to distinguish between the stuff they have control over, be that as a grown-up or as a child, and the stuff which they have no control over. And I'm not saying don't be concerned about it. I'm not saying that it doesn't have an effect on you, because it's like you say, these days it's bombarding you, it's coming in all the time. But I think there's a really important thing from what you were just saying to emphasize to people of all ages that you can only control, and there's nothing wrong. It's not neglectful to say there's nothing I can do about that. It's a fact. It's unchangeable. It's not something you have influence over.
And you're right, because if we're not careful, our focus goes towards the things that we can't control, and we get into this negative spin, and actually that ends up making us ill as well.
Yeah.
So whether we're talking about something that's big, like what's bubbling in Russia and Ukraine and over in Israel, or if it's just something small that we just fixate on and that we just go round and round and round and round, and it's hopeless, because, like you said, you cannot control it, and you're putting all that energy into something that you cannot control. Why don't you shift the focus to what you can control and use your energy in a more effective way?
That's exactly what I'm saying, because the energy itself becomes negative, not because of what you're doing, but because you're concentrating on something negative. Sorry,
and
Robyn.
there may be things that we can do, but we have a lot of, I mean, if you think of numbers, because we always grumble about the government and why are they doing this and why are they doing that and why don't they do this and why don't they do that, or local government and the councils. But we are, as a population, a much bigger number. And maybe there are things we can do, this, how we choose to spend our money, what we choose to engage with. So there may be things that we can do about the bigger things, and we can do those things. But then I would say to people, and have said to people, does it serve you to spend all that time fixating on something that you can't change? But if there are little bits and pieces that you can do, like how you choose to spend your money, where you choose to give to charity, if you give to charity, what you choose to support, or write to your MP or whatever, but then draw a line rather than spending all that energy when it's not doing anything. And it's more exhausting as well. But also, I think, in terms of what you were saying about, it is very, very difficult to stop young people seeing or having access to, whether that's by themselves or through a friend's phone. Maybe it's an opportunity, like we talked about at the beginning, an opportunity to show them good ways of using this interweb thing, but also how to be critical of that. Because I know when I was at school, we were encouraged to look at different headlines, BBC and ITV, because we had 4 channels. In fact, we only had 3. But the newspapers as well, so the broadsheets and the tabloids, look at how they report. And if you look at 2 different stories, how they're reported in one paper or one channel versus another, and is there one that's more reliable or a more newsworthy source, or is it just scaremongering? Or, the tabloids often have a reputation for these big headlines that just are designed to make you react rather than really just get thoughtful and work through the issue. So I think it's a great opportunity for things like that. Like you were saying, your kids are now asking each other, do you really believe that? Do you really think that's true? It's that question. I think questions can get us so far.
It is about questioning stuff. And I don't want to censor things from them to a degree. There are obviously, as far as social media platforms are concerned, I limit those. But there's no, the other day my daughter said to me, Mum, can I have Snapchat? I said to her, and what age is Snapchat? She said 13. How old are you? 11. There's your answer.
I'd ban it until she was 30, personally, but
well, yeah,
that's my own opinion.
At the moment, I've got a good distance. And the other thing, though, when it comes to our children, it is about having conversation, like we said earlier. It is about always talking. And if you've managed to create an environment in which your children can ask questions, like you were just saying, Robyn, then they're more likely to come to you, and they're less likely to be like, well, when I'm with mum and dad, I need to be well behaved. There are things that we talk about. There are things that we don't talk about. Because, my mum and dad, it was a different type of conversation. I've got a great relationship with my parents. However, the way I'm raising my children is different from the way that my mum and dad raised us, because there were some conversations that we knew that we just were not going to have. Whereas my children know that nothing is off limits. I might say to them, we're not having that conversation right now because, and also sometimes no just is a full sentence. However, they know that they can ask questions, and it's not like we'll turn around and we'll think that they're a bad person for asking that question. So it is about also creating the environment where our children can ask questions, find out about things, not feel embarrassed not knowing the answer or feeling like they can't ask a question, because we are a safe environment. I was actually having a conversation with my mum and dad the other day about my children, who they are very vocal, and if they disagree, they'll say, I disagree, which if you're used to children being told no, and it's just like, okay, then I now have to be quiet. And then a child actually goes, well, actually, really? The thing that surprises me in a good way is usually when they do come back with a response, it's actually quite a logical argument. It's not even as if because I said so. And so as an adult, it gets you thinking, you're like, that's a really good point, actually.
You're promoting debate there, though, Maria, which is really good.
Well, it is really good. As adults, when a child, though, comes in and starts that debate, sometimes I think there are quite a few adults that go, oh, I can't have a debate with a child. I mean, I'm the adult. I know best. I mean, I must have all the answers. Whereas I sometimes say to them, I actually don't know. Let's go on the internet and let's find out what the internet has to say.
Or what do you think? What are your thoughts? And I was thinking that earlier as you were talking. And, you might get a response back from the child, or the child might be throwing a tantrum. You think, oh, I just don't have time, energy, whatever for this now. Which is where, as the adult, we need to do a lot of self-work, I think, because I don't want to take my frustrations, my tiredness, my whatever out on my child. But if they're pushing my buttons, this stuff needs to come out somewhere. I need to go off and do my own self-work, but also self-work on, it's okay to turn around to my child and say, that's a fantastic question you've just asked. I don't know. What do you think? Let's discuss this. Let's explore this. Let's do some research.
I like the point you say about us having to deal with our own stuff, because if I look back at when I personally feel like I haven't been able to, I'm going to say, deal with my children, it's because I've been tired. I've decided that there's not enough time. So I've added fuel to the fire by saying it's not enough time. Or for some reason, I feel like I'm in an uncomfortable position. So that's me putting restrictions on that situation, which hasn't been helpful to the conversation. But I've done it. It's me that's doing it. Now, I mean, bath time is an excellent time for when parents can get wound up, because we think, right, we're going to go and put our children to bed. They have a bath, they get ready for bed, we read a story, then they go to sleep. By 8 o'clock, I can go downstairs and rest. Bath time also typically is the time at which your children want to tell you everything to the minutest of detail as to what's happened during their day. which is great because they want to share. However, we're thinking, no, 8 o'clock, they must be in bed. I mean, if you just relax and allow what will be, with a little bit of, cajoling, then bath time can be less stressful. This is what I have learnt. So now I sort of tell myself, when my son decides he wants to play noughts and crosses whilst he's having a bath, rather than going, right, he's got 15 minutes to have a bath, this is just going to delay bath time. I'm like, that's all right. And then in 5 minutes, we'll be getting out. So we can play for 5 minutes, but in 5 minutes, you need to get out. And he's like, all right then. And is it more accepting rather than, no, wash your body, brush your teeth, then we've got to get out. So you're right, Robyn. We've got to look at, I'm going to say, the triggers that we have and address those rather than placing it on our children. And then, it just erupts.
I think it's okay to be annoyed. It's okay to be short-tempered as long as you understand it. Because the problem in relation to not just adults talking to children, and this goes back to my previous occupation plus my own personal experience, is those that don't know. It's all right to think, well, why did I react like that? Because I've had a hell of a day, or because this has happened, that's happened. As long as you're aware, that's the thing that I find to be hugely important, because being unaware is where the danger is. Because I dealt with lots of people who are very, very unaware about their behavior and the way that they reacted towards other people. And that way lies real big problems, But if you are aware, and then you go on to Robyn's next bit then, which is after that awareness saying, right, okay, how could this have been? Or what was the intervening factor? What was the negative thing that was going on that made me behave in that way? And I think it's the awareness, which is such a positive thing. It's the lack of awareness, which is the problem, really.
Yeah. And it's also constantly sitting in that I am the victim. It's all being done to me, as opposed to, well, let's take ownership of your part in this. If somebody's triggering you, it's the trigger that you have. Usually a person isn't on purpose going to come and trigger you. 9 times out of 10. Usually, yeah. Because sometimes people do like to, I just have to look at my children and I know when they're winding each other up, regardless of who has the trigger. So it's like, well, if that is a trigger, why is it a trigger? What is it? Because we can do something about that. We have a choice. And I think that's sometimes the thing that we forget. We do have a choice. Sometimes the consequence of the choices, it might be a case of, well, that one hurts less, but we still have a choice.
And I think it's like you were saying earlier about being authentic and how we share. Like Dom, the 4 agreements, you were saying that first one, being very careful with how we share what we share. And it's okay to share, but to know, to have a sensitivity to how that's going to land with their audience. And I was thinking that we have the power. We are empowered to be authentic and to share how things are for me in an authentic way. But at the same time, there's the responsibility of that. With great power, I think, comes great responsibility. I can't be responsible for how somebody hears what I say, so long as I'm sharing it in an appropriate way. I'm not just coming in and dumping it on people, or you have to listen to me because this is my authenticness. But just, this is how it is for me. And maybe that conversation.
Every one of these episodes, Robyn, we invent a new word. What was that? What did you just say?
I don't know that I said a new word.
Authenticness. Is that a word?
Authenticness, yes.
No, it's a great word. I just wondered if it's authenticness. Yeah, why not?
I love playing with the English language. Just stick a ness on the end of anything.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with someone. I was actually having a conversation with my husband the other day. Occasionally we do like to talk to each other. No, we have a great relationship. And about being able to be authentic, I was saying, at the moment, I feel like we're living in a bit of a contradictory world, in the sense of, on one hand, we have to accept everything, and on the other hand, we have to be very aware of how what we say impacts people. So you can say what you want, be what you want, and everybody has to accept that. But then on the other side of the coin, you're not allowed to say certain things, and you're not allowed to address people in certain ways, which, do you see what I mean? It's a contradiction. How can you be everything and be yourself, and yet when you're having a conversation, you've got to be mindful of not to say certain things and not to act in a certain way. And that's why I think that people clash so much. And potentially going back to this, being able to be authentic, you're encouraged to be authentic, but just be very, very careful that in being authentic, we're becoming beige, because there are certain things you can't use colourful language, and you can't say certain things. It's like, I'm really confused. I'm not sure what I can do.
Do you think there's a line?
No,
I think if there is, it's a fuzzy line, and it's not
yeah,
straight.
exactly.
I think a friend of mine talks about trump cards. So whose trump card? My trump card to be authentic and say what I want to say, or my trump card, you're offending me with saying that in that way. And I think it's going back to that. We have the power to be authentic, but it's good for us to exercise that in a very responsible way.
Yeah.
And I think those two they are contradictory. And I love paradoxes, but I think that even goes beyond a paradox. I think it's using and misusing the idea of authenticity, because I think if we're being authentic, we're doing it with compassion. We're doing it with sensitivity, because I don't think our authentic selves goes around and stamps over other people.
Do you know, Robyn, that's exactly what I was thinking as you were talking then, because I won't say who it is, but there is somebody I know very well whose idea of being authentic is to be so bullish, to be so, I am this and I don't care what you think and all that. And this particular person is really, I think, confused in the way they're thinking about these things, because I think they're not being authentic in trying to be authentic. They're putting on an act, they're performing. And their authentic self probably would be much more pleasant, probably much more negotiative, probably much more sort of involved in what other people think, rather than going back to what I was saying before about, it's not about you just saying what you got to say. It's a two-way thing. And this particular person, I'm so tempted to say who it is, but I won't. This particular person, I've spoken to on numerous occasions, said, do you think it's okay that you should be so sure, so aggressive, so it's my way or the highway? And this particular person doesn't see that there's any problem with it. But I go back to what I just said to repeat that. I think that this person is, again, I can't use the word I was going to say, but this person is acting at being real. Do you see what I mean? And I find that quite sad.
I love the work of Brené Brown, and recently I've been reading things like Braving the Wilderness and Dare to Lead. Her stuff on leadership is incredible, and I think we lead ourselves, we lead our children, we lead the people around us, so we don't have to have a role, an official role as a leader to be a leader. I think if you speak on a podcast, you're quite often a leader because people are looking to you, they're listening to what you're saying and maybe taking that on board and practicing it. But Brené Brown says that when we feel threatened, we go into probably one of three default states. So we shrink, or we armor up, or we puff up. And I think sometimes in our attempts to be authentic, if we felt that that's been squashed, and we have in the past shrunk and pulled back, then maybe it's just the pendulum swinging. And you see it in things like the feminist movement, that we then, well, right, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to speak my truth and I'm going to armor up and puff up and be bigger and bolder.
I love this analogy. This is the puffer fish we're getting to now. We talked about this
Yes.
before. I love this. This is great. Go on.
So I think it's maybe, and if you think of Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, we do swing sometimes until we can find a more stable middle. And I think maybe sometimes people need to go through that stage, but if we don't go through it with curiosity, as in, is this real and authentic? How is this feeling for me? Am I comfortable with this? If not, why not? Is it more that I'm holding something that is being triggered? Am I scratching an itch? And actually I'm still not comfortable with it. And if we can do that, I think we'll find where we are happy and where we are really being authentic. But otherwise, I think we are still reactivating and reacting rather than responding. And we still haven't found our true authenticity.
Go on, talk about the puffer fish. I'm waiting for the puffer fish now. No, seriously, I thought it was a great analogy because you used that about two episodes ago, and I thought, yeah, the people who have cowered previously get to the point, not necessarily through strength or just through circumstance, it could be anything, but they turn into the puffer fish and they blow themselves up, not in an arrogant way, but in a way that makes them feel that much bigger, that makes them that much less vulnerable, sort of thing.
Yeah, if we feel there's a threat coming towards us and we want to diffuse that threat or feel unthreatened, then we become bigger than we perceive the threat to be. And if you think of the puffer fish, it blows up to I don't know how much bigger than its normal size, must be about 3 or 5 times bigger. And it has all these spiny bits that come out as well, which are flat when it's not inflated. So it just, boom, all this armor comes out. And to me, it's just such a perfect image of back off. I'm going to be bigger than you and you're not going to threaten me. And there are lots of people that we can look at in like the news or social media or the press world that we can think of, yes, that's an example of a pufferfish.
I remember I was in a meeting with someone who uses the pufferfish as a protective mechanism, and it, just to see it is just, I was going to say inspiring, but not in a positive way. And it is because he was backed into a corner and he didn't like what he was hearing. So that was his response. His response is, okay, then you're making me feel like I'm really small. In response to that, I'm just going to come at you. And it's because they feel vulnerable, and their reaction to feeling vulnerable is, right, I'm going to become bigger and louder and show you that actually I am not vulnerable.
I'm going to use aggression as a defense mechanism. And Brene talks about how we can use vulnerability as a strength, how we can be strong in our vulnerability. And I think that's, like she's talking about in terms of leadership, that's the real sign of a leader. That I'm okay with you knowing I'm flawed. I'm okay, like you said, with your children to say, turn around and say, I don't know. That's a really interesting question. Let's find out. Or let's see what we can discover, because we might not find the answer. And that's okay too. But we will find something. We will learn something along the way.
Well, ladies, we're just coming up to our hour now. I'm not sure if I'm actually allowed to call you ladies anymore. Is that a forbidden one?
I am a lady. I mean, I'm not
indeed.
offended. It's correct.
Yes. What words can we use here?
This is our line now. Ladies.
People, we're coming to the
end. I'll refrain from calling you girls, right? I just say ladies. So we're just come up to an hour now. Thank you very much, Maria, for joining us today. Really, really interesting conversation. We didn't actually get around to literally what you do as a coach. So maybe, is it the opportunity to come back at some time in the future and tell us more specifics about how you work and the things that you do?
I would love that, Nigel. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Robyn, anything else you'd like to say?
Just a huge thank you, Maria. It's been wonderful to have you. You always share some really good, inspirational stuff. So thank you.
I was just saying you're welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. I was just going to say that, as I always say at the end here, if there's, or I'll ask you actually, I didn't put this to you before, but are you okay for us to put your email address at the end of the podcast? You happy
Yes,
with that?
that's fine. Yep, of course.
Excellent.
Thank
You get two, get one free this time, right? Because at the end of the podcast, you will see Robyn's email address, my email address, so you'll now see Maria's email address. And the reason for that to be there is because we'd very, very much like this to be a conversation rather than, you just listening to us. And if there's anything else that you want to say, which is of more of a delicate or a private nature in relation to some of the things we've talked about, or maybe something that you want to talk to me or to Robyn or to Maria individually about, please send them on that email address. And obviously that'll come directly to us. And then we'll do whatever we can to give you information or to help you or assist you in whatever way is possible. Thank you very much. Anything else to say? I'm going to say, ladies?
Nothing from me.
No?
No, and nothing for me. Just thank you for watching and tune in next time.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.